The night Amara slipped her last $20 under the door of a soaking stranger, she had no idea she was handing it to the man who owned everything she had ever dreamed. She had no shoes that weren't cracked. She had no heater. She had exactly one boiled egg left in her kitchen. And yet, she gave. What happened next would shake the entire city to its foundation. But first, you need to understand where Amara came from. Amara Diallo was 24 years old, and she had been surviving on the edge of disaster for as long as she could remember. She lived in a one-room apartment on the east side of Dakar, the kind of neighborhood where the walls were thin, the ceilings leaked, and the landlord knocked every Friday with his palm open and his patience gone. Her mother had died when she was 12. Her father had disappeared before she was 5. She had been raised by her grandmother, a fierce, warm woman named Yaya Kadi, who cooked jollof rice on a single gas flame and told Amara every night, "Your heart is your fortune. Never let anyone rob you of it." Yaya Kadi was now sick, not just a little sick, dangerously sick, the kind of sick that required a specialist, a hospital, medications that cost more per bottle than Amara earned in a month. Amara worked 3 jobs. In the morning, she cleaned offices at a high-rise business complex downtown, scrubbing floors, emptying bins, wiping fingerprints off glass walls that reflected a world she was not allowed to enter. In the afternoon, she sold mangoes and groundnuts from a small cart on the corner of Avenue Leopold Sédar Senghor. In the evening, she ironed clothes for a seamstress 2 streets away, pressing sharp creases into fabrics she had never owned and never expected to own. She never complained, she never begged, she never asked anyone for anything. But the hospital bills kept growing, and the landlord's fist on her door was getting louder. It was a Thursday in October when the storm arrived, the kind of storm that doesn't warn you, the kind that comes sideways, turning umbrellas inside out, flooding the gutters, blinding the streetlights. Amara had just finished her evening ironing shift, her thin jacket soaked through, her sandals slapping against puddles that reached her ankles, when she heard it. A sound. Weak. Barely there, like something being swallowed by the rain. She stopped. She turned, and a narrow alley between a pharmacy and a boarded-up bakery, hunched against the wall with his head in his hands, was a man. He was tall, but his shoulders were caved inward, like something had broken him. He wore a plain gray shirt, no jacket, no coat, soaked to the skin. His shoes were expensive. She noticed that immediately, but his posture was that of a man who had lost everything. Amara hesitated. Every wise, sensible, street-smart instinct she had developed over 24 years of hard living told her to keep walking. And then the man moved, and she saw his face. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't drunk. He was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. The silent, controlled kind of crying that only comes from someone who has been taught that showing pain is weakness, and who is so overwhelmed that even the mask has slipped. Amara walked toward him. "Are you hurt?" The man looked up. His eyes were dark, deep-set, and filled with something she had seen before, the look of a person drowning inside their own life. "I'm fine," he said. His voice was calm, controlled, the voice of someone who was definitely not fine. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her worn cloth bag and pulled out the only dry thing she had, the small hand towel she used to carry for her ironing work. "Here," she said, "at least dry your face." He took it slowly, like he had forgotten that strangers could offer kindness. "Do you have somewhere to go?" A pause, then quietly, "Not tonight." Amara thought about her one-room apartment, the single mattress, the cracked walls, the boiled egg. She thought about Yaya Kadi, who had always told her that your heart is your fortune. "Come," she said. "You can sleep on my floor." He told her his name was Kareem. Just Kareem. No last name, no story. Not yet. He sat on her floor with his back against the wall, the borrowed towel folded neatly beside him, and he watched her quietly as she boiled water on a single gas ring to make him tea. She split the one boiled egg. She gave him the bigger half. He looked at it for a long moment, and then looked at her. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know," she said simply. "That's why I'm doing it." He ate in silence, and Amara noticed things about him. The way he sat very still, as if he was used to rooms where stillness was required. The way his hands, when they rested in his lap, were perfectly composed. The way his eyes moved slowly around her tiny apartment without a trace of judgment or pity, only curiosity. "What happened to you tonight?" she asked. A long pause. "I needed to remember who I was," he said finally. "Sometimes you can only find that in the places that have nothing to offer you." Amara looked at him steadily. "And what did you find?" He looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "More than I expected," he said quietly. She showed him where to sleep. She gave her her single spare blanket, and she slept with her jacket pulled over her legs. In the morning, she woke to find he was gone. And under the door, folded into a neat square, was a piece of paper with a single sentence written in careful, precise handwriting. "Thank you, Amara. I will not forget this." She stared at it. She hadn't told him her name. 3 days after the night of the storm, Yaya Kadi collapsed. Amara heard the crash from the courtyard and ran. She found her grandmother on the floor of the small kitchen, her eyes half open, her lips moving soundlessly, one hand still clutching the edge of the counter as if trying to pull herself back into the world. "Yaya, Yaya, look at me!" Amara's hands were shaking as she pressed her grandmother's head into her lap. "Stay with me, please stay with me." Her neighbor's child, little Mariama, only 4 years old, who sometimes wandered through the open doorway, was standing in the entrance, her eyes wide and terrified. "Tantine Amara? Is Grandmaman sleeping?" "Go get your mother," Amara said, her voice as steady as she could make it. "Go now, quickly." The child ran. The ambulance came 40 minutes later. At the hospital, the doctor was blunt. "Her condition has deteriorated significantly. She needs surgery within the next 72 hours, and she needs the specialist medications to stabilize before we can operate. The total cost—" He named a number. It was 4 times everything Amara had saved in 3 years. Amara sat in the chair outside the ward and did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears don't pay bills. She made a list in her notebook instead. Who she could ask, what she could sell, what job she could pick up tonight. The list kept coming up short. She was still sitting there at midnight when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Amara." She recognized the voice instantly. "Kareem." "I heard your grandmother was taken to hospital," he said, his voice careful and controlled. "I want to help." Amara stood up from the chair. "How did you know? Who are you? How did you get this number?" "I will explain everything, but first, can I come?" A beat of silence. "Yes," she said. Kareem arrived at Hôpital Principal in a car that made the security guard straighten up and fix his collar. Amara had been watching from the entrance, and when she saw the vehicle, low, black, the kind that didn't announce itself but somehow commanded the entire street, her stomach tightened. He stepped out in a dark jacket, unhurried, and walked toward her like a man who'd never been in a rush because everything always waited for him. He was the same man she had given her floor to 3 nights ago. He was also, clearly, not the man she had thought he was. "Kareem." "Later," he said gently.
Where is your grandmother? What happened in the next 20 minutes was something Amara would replay in her mind for years. Kareem walked to the reception desk. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't flash anything. He simply told the administrator his name, his full name, and asked to speak with the hospital director. The administrator's face changed completely. Within 3 minutes, the director himself came out of his office. Within 15 minutes, Yaya Kadi was moved to a private ward, a specialist had been called in, and every medication on the list had been marked for immediate dispensing. Amara stood in the corridor and watched, feeling the floor shift beneath her feet. "Who are you?" she whispered when he came back to stand beside her. Kareem looked at her steadily. "My name is Kareem Saul. I am the founder and chairman of Saul Group." The air left Amara's lungs. Saul Group. She knew that name. Everyone in Dakar knew that name. Everyone in West Africa knew that name. Real estate, technology, healthcare infrastructure, private equity, a trillion-franc empire built in one generation. "The building where I clean offices in the morning, Résidence Saul Tower," she said slowly. He nodded once. "Yes." "You own it?" "Among others." Amara pressed both hands flat against the wall behind her. She needed something solid. "Then why," she said very quietly, "were you sitting in an alley in the rain?"
He told her in the hospital cafeteria, over 2 plastic cups of cheap tea that neither of them drank. 3 weeks earlier, Kareem had discovered that his fiancée of 2 years, Isabel, a woman from a powerful family whom he had loved genuinely and completely, had been conducting a parallel life. She had a second relationship with his own executive vice president, a man named Dauda, who had been his closest friend since university. The betrayal was not just romantic, it was strategic. Documents had been quietly transferred. Karim's shares had been illegally signed over. Isabel and Dauda had been systematically draining a subsidiary company of Saul Group with the intent to force a hostile acquisition and take the East Division. "I found out the night of the storm," Kareem said, his voice flat and controlled in the way that only barely controlled things are. "I had been handed the evidence by my legal team at 8 o'clock that evening. I signed the emergency halt orders. I initiated the legal proceedings, and then I went outside because I needed the world to feel real again." He looked at his hands. "I had given Isabel everything. I had trusted Dauda with my life, and in the same night I learned they had both looked me in the face and chosen money and power over everything." Amara said nothing. She waited. "And then," Kareem said, "a woman with cracked sandals and a wet jacket sat down next to me in an alley and gave me the only dry thing she had, a towel, and then she gave me her floor, and then she split her last egg." He finally looked at her. "You have more than I do. You have always had more than I do. I just didn't know what the word more really meant." Amara felt something crack open in her chest, but she kept her face still. "You shouldn't have come tonight because of guilt." "I didn't come because of guilt," he said quietly. "I came because you are the only person I've met in years who made me feel like a human being." Isabel found out about Amara on a Tuesday. The story came to her through her assistant, who had overheard something at the hospital. The trillionaire founder of Saul Group paying a cleaning woman's grandmother's medical bills, spending evenings at a one-room apartment in the East Quarter. Isabel had always known Kareem's weakness, his heart. She had exploited it for 2 years. She was not ready to lose it now.
Not because she loved him, but because the legal case against her was moving faster than her lawyers had anticipated, and a reconciliation with Kareem would be the only thing powerful enough to make him pull back the charges. She arrived at Amara's office, the building where Amara cleaned early mornings, on a Wednesday at 7 a.m. Amara was on her knees in the lobby, scrubbing the floor tile by tile with a mop and brush when she heard heels on the marble. She looked up. The woman was extraordinary, tall, immaculate, dressed in a cream silk blouse and wide-leg trousers, her hair flawless, her perfume arriving a full 3 seconds before she did. She looked down at Amara like people look at floor stains they are about to remove. "You're Amara," she said, not a question. Amara stood up slowly. "Yes," she said. Isabel's smile was precise and cold. "I'm Isabel, Kareem's fiancée." "His former fiancée," Amara said quietly. Something flickered across Isabel's face. "Careful," she said. "You don't know what you've wandered into, little girl. You think he sees you? He is using you. He's humiliating himself to make me jealous. This is a game. You're a prop." Amara looked at her steadily. "If I'm just a prop, then why are you here at 7 in the morning to speak to me?" Isabel's eyes narrowed. "I'm warning you." "No, you're afraid." A beat. Isabel stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "If you don't disappear from his life in the next 48 hours, I will make sure you are blacklisted from every cleaning company, every job agency, every employer in this city. You will not be able to find work. You and your sick grandmother will have nothing." Amara did not flinch. "Then we'll have nothing together. It won't be the first time for me." Isabel stared at her. Then she turned and walked back through the lobby, her heels ringing out against the marble like a clock ticking down. Amara watched her go. Then she picked up her mop and finished the floor. Amara did not tell Kareem about the confrontation. She thought it was over. It was not over. The following Friday, little Mariama, the 4-year-old from next door, was playing outside Amara's apartment when a car she had never seen pulled up at the end of the alley. A woman got out. She crouched down and spoke softly to Mariama. She offered the child a lollipop. She asked the child questions. Where does Amara go in the evenings? Does she have a man who visits? Does she talk on the phone a lot at night? It was Mariama's mother, Fatu, Amara's neighbor, who caught the tail end of the conversation. Fatu was a small, fierce woman who had grown up on the same streets as Amara and who trusted no one who arrived in silk in the East Quarter. She scooped Mariama up without a word, walked into her house, and called Amara immediately. "Someone is watching you," Fatu said, "and they used my baby to do it. Who have you made an enemy of, Amara?" Amara's blood ran cold. "Is Mariama okay?" "She is fine. She thought it was a nice lady with candy, but I saw her face, Amara. I know a predator when I see one." Amara sat down on the edge of her mattress, her hands shaking for the first time. Someone had gone to her neighborhood. Someone had used a 4-year-old. She called Kareem. "She came to my building on Wednesday, and today someone spoke to a child next door. Kareem, I need you to tell me the truth right now. How dangerous is Isabel?" The silence on the other end of the line was long. "I'm coming to you now."
He arrived in 40 minutes, which meant he had been driving the moment he hung up. He came through the alley in the same plain gray shirt he had worn the night of the storm, and Amara realized this was deliberate. He dressed down to come to her neighborhood, not to blend in, to show her that he came as himself. He sat across from her in her small apartment, his long frame folded into a wooden chair that was probably too small for him, and he told her everything. The full scope of the fraud, the depth of Isabel's calculation, the fact that Isabel's family was now pressuring Kareem's board to drop the charges in exchange for a negotiated settlement, and that some of his board members were beginning to capitulate. "She thinks," Kareem said, "that if she can isolate you, frighten you away, then I will lose my grounding again and become vulnerable. She's watched me long enough to understand that I am most dangerous when I'm connected to something real." "And I am real to you?" Amara asked. "Yes," he said, immediately, without hesitation. Amara studied him. "I am a woman who cleans your building, who cannot pay her grandmother's medical bills, who has never owned anything worth naming, and you are sitting in my apartment on a chair that cost less than your shoelace. Why?" "Because this is the only room I've been in this year where no one wanted anything from me." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, someone turned on a radio 2 windows over, and the faint strains of an old Youssou N'Dour song drifted in through the cracked shutter. "Yaya Khadi asked about you," Amara said finally. "What did she ask?" "She asked if you were good. I told her I wasn't sure yet." Kareem almost smiled. "That's fair." She said, "Tell him to come and let me look at his face. She says a person's face tells you everything their mouth won't." "Then I should go see her," he said. "Tomorrow. Tonight, we need to decide what to do about Isabel." What neither Amara nor Kareem knew was that the leak did not come from Isabel's network. It came from Binta. Binta was Amara's supervisor at the cleaning company, a woman she had trusted for 2 years, who had given her good shifts when things were tight, who had recommended her for the office contract at Residence Saul Tower. Binta had been approached by Isabel's assistant 1 month ago. The offer was simple: report on Amara's schedule, her movements, her relationships, and receive a payment equal to 3 months of Binta's salary. Binta had accepted. It was Binta who had told Isabel about Yaya Hadi's hospitalization. It was Binta who had tipped off the woman who appeared in the alley to question little Mariama. And it was Binta who the following Monday morning called Amara into the back office with a sympathetic expression and told her that her contract had been terminated. "The client requested a replacement," Binta said smoothly. "Nothing personal. You know how these things are." Amara stared at her. She had known Binta's voice for 2 years, the slightly too smooth cadence when she was hiding something, the way her eyes moved to the upper left corner of her face when she wasn't telling the truth. "Which client?" Amara asked. "I can't say." "The client that specifically requested the Saul Tower account." Binta's eyes moved to the upper left. Amara understood everything in that moment. "Binta," Amara said quietly, "how much did she pay you?" Silence. Amara picked up her bag from the hook by the door, the same battered cloth bag she had carried for 3 years. "I hope it was enough, because you just sold something that was worth much more." She walked out. She did not call Kareem. She went straight to the hospital to sit with Yaya Khadi. Yaya Khadi was sitting up in her hospital bed when Amara arrived, eating the rice porridge a nurse had brought and complaining gently that it needed more pepper. The surgery had gone well. The specialty medications had done what they were supposed to do. The old woman's color had returned, and with it, her sharpness. She took one look at Amara's face and said, "Sit down. Tell me." Amara sat. She told her grandmother everything, the whole story. The storm, the alley, the egg, Kareem, Isabel, Binta, the child in the alley, the lost job. Yaya Kadi listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes steady. When Amara finished, the old woman was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "The woman Isabel, she is afraid of you." "She's not afraid of me, she's trying to destroy me." "That is the same thing, my child. Powerful people who are not afraid of you ignore you. Only those who know what you carry come to fight you." Amara was quiet. "And this man Kareem, bring him tomorrow. I want to see his face." "Yaya, he's a trillionaire. He owns half of—" "He is a man who sat on your floor and shared your egg," the old woman said firmly. "That is what I know about him. Bring him tomorrow." Kareem arrived at the hospital the next morning, alone. No driver, no assistant, no security visible, though Amara suspected they were somewhere outside. He had brought mangoes, not a luxury gift basket, not flowers. Mangoes, the same kind Amara sold from her cart on Avenue Senghor. He placed them on the bedside table and sat in the plastic chair and waited while Yaya Kadi looked at him for a long, uncomfortable moment. He did not fill the silence. He simply waited. Amara watched from the doorway and held her breath. Finally, Yaya Kadi nodded slowly. "You are not afraid of silence. Good. Cowards are afraid of silence. They fill it with noise." "I've been surrounded by noise for a long time. I'm learning to be grateful for what's quiet." The old woman studied him. "My granddaughter has never in her life accepted help from anyone. She once refused a meal from a friend because she said owing someone a meal was a debt she didn't want to owe. Do you understand what it means that she lets you into her home?" Kareem held her gaze. "It is the greatest trust anyone has ever placed in me." Yaya Kadi looked at him for 3 more seconds. Then she said, "You may peel me a mango." Amara let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. He peeled the mango. Isabel moved to a new strategy on the following Thursday. A video was posted to 3 separate social media accounts simultaneously. In the video, a woman, her face blurred, her voice distorted, claimed to have information that Kareem Saul was being manipulated by a woman who deliberately positioned herself as a pity case to gain access to his fortune and who had a history of extracting money from wealthy men under false pretenses. It named Amara. It named the hospital. It named the cleaning company. It used the correct amount of detail to sound credible and the correct amount of vagueness to avoid legal liability. Within 12 hours, it had been seen by 40,000 people. Within 24 hours, it had been seen by 400,000. Comments flooded in, mocking, cruel, the particular cruelty the internet reserves for poor women who dare to be seen near rich men. Amara saw the video at 6 in the morning, standing in her kitchen, about to leave for the job search she had planned. She sat down very slowly. She watched it twice, then put her phone face down on the table, drank her tea, and left the house at exactly the same time she had planned. She was 2 streets away when Kareem called. "I've seen it," she said before he could speak. "Amara, don't apologize, it's not your fault, but I need you to understand something. Whatever happens next, I need to be the one to decide how to respond. Not you, not your lawyers, me." A long pause. "What do you need?" he asked. "I need 48 hours, and I need you to trust me." Another pause. "I trust you. I've trusted you since you split an egg with a stranger."
What Amara did with her 48 hours would later be described by journalists as the most elegant act of self-defense in the history of Dakar social media. But at the time, she did not think of it as elegant. She thought of it as the truth. She went first to Fatu. "I need to borrow your camera phone," she said. "Mine is too old. And I need little Mariama." "Mariama?" "Not for anything dangerous. I need to film something real." Fatu crossed her arms and looked at her for a long moment. Then she handed over her phone. Amara filmed herself in her apartment. No filter, no script, no lighting rig. The cracked walls were visible, the thin mattress in the corner, the single pot on the stove. She looked into the camera and she told her story, every part of it: her mother's death, her father's absence, Yaikati, the 3 jobs, the night of the storm, the boiled egg, the note under the door, the hospital, Isabel in the lobby, Binta in the back office, little Mariama in the alley. She did not speak about Kareem's wealth. She did not defend herself against the accusations. She simply told the truth. At the end, Mariama toddled into the shot, unscripted, completely natural, and climbed into Amara's lap and asked if they were going to eat now. The internet destroyed itself. Within 6 hours, Amara's video had been viewed by more people than Isabel's. Within 12 hours, former colleagues, neighbors, hospital staff, and a nurse who had seen Amara sit at Yaikati's bedside for 9 straight hours had all posted their own testimonies. The cleaning company, terrified by the backlash, reversed Amara's termination and fired Binta instead. Binta, faced with the evidence Kareem's legal team had quietly compiled, confirmed everything in exchange for a reduced civil penalty. And Isabel, whose lawyers had been monitoring the situation, advised her to take a very long international trip. She left Dakar on a Saturday evening, without saying goodbye to anyone. 2 weeks after the storm had passed, both the meteorological one and the social media one, Kareem asked Amara to take a walk with him, not to a restaurant, not to a rooftop, not to any of the places that would have been logical for a man of his position to choose, to the alley. The narrow passage between the pharmacy and the boarded-up bakery where she had first found him. He had done something to it. Not a lot, not in a theatrical way. There were small tea light candles in glass jars placed along the wall, the cheap kind you buy 3 for 200 francs at the market. Someone had swept the alley floor. 2 plastic chairs had been placed against the wall, and between them, on an upturned wooden crate, was a plate of mangoes and 2 cups of tea. Amara stopped in the entrance and looked at all of it. "I know what you're about to say," she said. "You don't," said Kareem. "You're going to ask me to marry me. I'm going to ask you if you would be willing to choose me. That's different." She looked at him. "I don't want you to marry a trillionaire," he said simply. "I want you to choose the man who sat in the alley in the rain and was found by a woman who had nothing but gave everything. That is the man I want to be, and I don't know how to be him without you." Amara was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the candles, the plastic chairs, the mangoes. "Yaikati is going to be unbearable about this," she said. "Completely insufferable," he agreed. "She's going to take all the credit." "She should. She raised you." Amara finally looked at him directly, the way she looked at things she was deciding to keep. "Yes," she said. "Yes what?" "Yes, I choose you, the man in the alley. All of him." Kareem reached into his pocket and took out a ring. It was not an Orstantius ring. It was simple, brilliant, set in rose gold, the color of the sky over the east quarter at 6 in the morning when the first light came through. Amara's eyes filled with tears for the first time since the night of the storm. She let them come. Justice, when it arrived, was not loud. It came quietly, the way things that have been building for a long time tend to arrive. The court case against Isabel and Dayuda was concluded 6 months later. The charges of corporate fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and illegal share transfer were upheld on all counts. Isabel's family, which had spent years cultivating the image of a dynasty above reproach, watched their patriarch's business empire begin to unravel as financial auditors followed the trail backward and found irregularities that predated Kareem's relationship with Isabel by nearly a decade. Dayuda lost his position, his shares, his reputation, and the company he had quietly hoped to acquire. He issued a public apology. Kareem did not respond to it publicly. In private, he simply said to Amara, "I grieve the friendship more than the betrayal." That's the honest answer. "That's a good answer," she said. Binta, who had cooperated with the investigation, paid her civil penalty and quietly left her position. She sent Amara a single text message weeks later. It read only, "I'm sorry. I knew what you were worth, and I chose money. I was wrong." Amara read it once, set her phone down, and went to check on Yaikati, who was doing extremely well and who had recently started telling the hospital nurses how to improve their jollof rice recipe.
The wedding was held on a Saturday in May, when the harmattan had blown through and the air was finally cool and clear. Kareem had offered Amara anything she wanted. She had said, outside, in the neighborhood, with real food, and Yaikati seated at the front in the best chair. So they strung lights between the houses on Amara's street. They brought long wooden tables and covered them with wax print cloth and gold and blue. They cooked jollof rice in the largest pots the neighborhood had ever seen, and the smell reached 3 streets in every direction, and people followed their noses and arrived uninvited, and no one was turned away. Little Mariama was the flower girl. She threw petals in completely the wrong direction and declared herself the best flower girl in the world, and no one disagreed. Yaikati sat in the best chair in the front row, dressed in a grand bubu of deep indigo and gold, her hands folded in her lap, her face composed in the expression of a woman who has always known how the story ends. When Amara walked toward Kareem, in a dress she had chosen herself, the color of sunrise, with her grandmother's old bracelets on her wrists, the people on the street began to clap. Not because they knew who Kareem was, because they knew who Amara was. They had watched her wake at 5 every morning for years. They had seen her sell mangoes in the heat and iron fabric by candlelight and walk home in the rain without complaint. They had watched her love her grandmother without condition and give her floor to strangers and split her last egg. They clapped because she deserved this. When Kareem took her hand at the altar, he leaned close and said quietly, "I have never been afraid before a meeting in my entire career, but I am terrified right now." "Good," she said. "It means it's real." And then Yaikati's voice rose above the crowd, sharp, warm, and completely unself-conscious. I told her years ago that her heart was her fortune. Did anyone listen? No. Now look." The street erupted in laughter. Amara put her face into her hands and laughed until she cried. And Kareem, who had not laughed in a very long time, laughed with her. 1 year after the wedding, Saul Group announced a new initiative, a fund named after an old woman from the East Quarter of Dakar, the Yaikati Foundation. Its mandate, to provide emergency medical funding, employment support, and educational access for women in informal labor, the cleaners, the ironers, the cart vendors, the women who held cities together with their bare hands and were never seen. The announcement was made at a press conference. Kareem stood at the podium, Amara stood beside him, and Yaikati, seated in the front row of the press conference because no other arrangement had ever been considered, waved slightly when a photographer caught her eye, and smiled the smile of a woman who has lived long enough to see the universe keep its promises. At the end of the event, a journalist asked Kareem what the single moment was that had changed his life. He didn't hesitate. "A woman gave me half of her last egg, and I understood for the first time what wealth actually is." The journalist waited for more. "That's it," said Kareem. "That's the whole answer."
And now, dear viewer, I want you to sit with something.
Amara did not find Kareem because she was looking for a rich man. She found him because she refused, even in her most desperate hour, to become the kind of person who walks past someone suffering in the rain. The woman who threatened her had everything: money, beauty, connection, power, and she lost it all. The woman who had nothing, who cleaned other people's buildings, who sold fruit on a street corner, who slept on a thin mattress and split her last egg, she kept everything that mattered and gained everything she deserved. Tell me something honestly in the comments below. If you had been Amara, exhausted, broke, with a sick grandmother, and a job that could disappear at any moment, would you still have stopped for the stranger in the rain? Or would you have kept walking? There is no wrong answer, only an honest one. And if this story moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone you know or someone you are, then share it, because stories like Amara's deserve to be seen. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you in the next story, where once again, the people the world overlooks will show you what it really means to be extraordinary. Until then, stay kind, stay real, and remember, your heart is your fortune.